Government will gather on Wednesday for an historic summit of the community of Latin American and Caribbean states to strengthen ties of integration, cooperation, and dialogue in the midst of an unprecedented attack by the United States against their peoples. Several heads of states and government will join those already in Tegucigalpa with an important agenda to consolidate regional integration and build a bloc response to the brutal attack of the United States against the peoples of the world, and especially the peoples of Latin America and Caribbean. The President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, who will receive the temporary presidency of the community from his counterpart, Xiomara Castro, assured that he will propose a bloc response to the tariff with which Washington intends to punish, in particular, the free peoples of the world. And the 9th Summit of the Latin American and Caribbean Communities of States 2025 began this Tuesday in Honduras. On the first day, the foreign ministers of several countries met to prepare a document that will be presented on Wednesday by the heads of states attending the meeting. Special Envoy Roberto Hugo Presa with all the details.
The foreign ministers of the countries that make up the community of Latin American and Caribbean states, CELAC, arrived in Tegucigalpa in the last few hours. Among them, the ministers of Guatemala, Cuba, Costa Rica, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela, among others, stand out. The spirit of unity and integration is evident at this meeting.
The
most important thing is to keep CELAC strong as a regional mechanism for coordination and joint support. I think that is the most important thing, a CELAC that remains united to face the challenges of the future regardless of the governments it has and the ideological sign. I think that is the great achievement, to be able to sit down, dialogue, and reach common positions on the issues we consider a priority.
The group of foreign ministers met on Tuesday to define the themes of a consensus document called the Tegucigalpa Declaration, which will be presented on Wednesday by the presidents attending the conclave. Some presidents arrived today in Tegucigalpa.
The president of Uruguay, the interim president of Haiti, for example, have already arrived here. Other presidents are arriving today, such as President Lula, president of Cuba, and tomorrow other presidents will arrive, such as Mexico. Today also St. Vincent, President Petro.
The 9th Summit of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States has been called United for the Great Fatherland. One of the main objectives is to define a new direction for the regional integration policy in order to face new challenges, such as the interference of the United States.
The slogan of the summit is United for the Great Fatherland, and this is a reflection of the fact that today, more than ever, this criterion of a united Great Fatherland is what can make us face the standoffs of foreign powers.
All issues fall into it, but with priority the exercise in favor of the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace, the right to development of our peoples, the exercise of sovereignty and self-determination of our peoples, and the cooperation and integration among Latin American and Caribbean countries.
At the end of this 9th Summit, the pro-tempore president of CELAC, Xiomara Castro, will give a report on her performance and will hand over to the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, who will assume the leadership of this regional organization.
Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, Tegucigalpa, Honduras.
And Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro signed a decree of economic emergency Tuesday, empowering the state to adopt different measures to face a trade war begun by the United States. During the activation of the so-called telecommunications and new technologies engine at the Polyhedron Arena in Caracas, Maduro sealed the constitutional action that allows the adoption for 2 months of urgent and extraordinary measures to protect all the country's productive sectors and defend the national economy. The action is promoted by the Venezuelan government to face the global threat posed by the large-scale tariff imposition by the U.S. government. At the same time, the president praised the solid stock market index registered in the country in the midst of the tariff war being waged by Washington.
Based on the national dialogue, based on the national effort, I am going to proceed, as I announced yesterday, to sign the decree by which In view of the international circumstances and the impact of the economic trade war against the world and against Venezuela, against our entire continent, I appeal to the constitutional powers granted to me by the decree of economic emergency to protect, integrally, all the productive sectors and guarantee balance, harmony, capacity of resistance and recovery in the face of the circumstances that arise in the world. I proceed, today, April 8th, to sign the decree of economic emergency that empowers me for 2 months to act and to implement different modalities of public policies to defend the national economy, to protect it and to move forward.
The Dominican Republic has declared 3 days of national mourning after the collapse of a nightclub roof in the nation's capital, claiming the lives of at least 113 people and injured around 155. The most recent briefing by the director of the Emergency Operations Center, Juan Manuel Mendez, confirmed the rising death toll as well as the passing of merengue singer Ruby Perez, whose body was taken out early Wednesday morning. While delivering the news, Mendez indicated he does not rule out the possibility of finding survivors of the rubble, as all emergency resources and institutions have been mobilized to assist in the search. The incident, which also caused the death of Montecristi Governor Nelson Milagro Cruz Martinez, has led to the suspension of many official, legislative, and political activities in solidarity with victims and their families. The new tariffs of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, came into force on Wednesday with a predicted strong impact on the global economy. The new tariff, while misnamed reciprocal tariffs, are being seen as a punishment for the countries of the world with which Washington has a trade deficit. At dawn on Wednesday, more than 60 countries are impacted by this measure from the White House, as China is charged 104%, the European Union 20%, plus additional levies of up to 50% for more than 50 countries, for which have led to the fall of global markets. And on the pretext of encouraging domestic production, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced new tariffs on pharmaceutical imports. As part of a series of tariffs he has imposed on various industries, the U.S. President is seeking to encourage foreign pharmaceutical companies to move their operations to the United States. Since taking office, the President has taken a reciprocal approach to tariffs against more than 185 countries, arguing that the United States has been disadvantaged in trade. The 19th Jibara International Poor Film Festival will be held in Cuba from April 15th to the 19th, with the participation of more than 500 works from 30 countries, with a representation covering all continents. Our colleague Jordanis Rodriguez with the information.
According to history, Admiral Christopher Columbus, in his transit through these lands of America, after observing the enigmatic landscape of the waters of this bay, wrote in his logbook on October 29, 1492, about the natural beauty of the area and the fact that the site has something mystical.
It is said that even Isadora Duncan, the great dancer, was there, and even other personalities who have visited the place. But everyone talks about the magic of the town, of its people, and it is something that is much appreciated, turning the city not only during those days in the capital of cinema in Cuba, but in the capital of the arts.
The film event, which begins on April 15th, was conceived along 2 main lines by filmmaker and founder Humberto Salas. The first from a dimension that is rare in the culture of the country as a community proposal, and the other from the informality and relaxation that generates, although it sounds contradictory, a very rigorous event, a very complex staging, rich in multiculturalism.
We are very happy with the festival, which in addition to Luciano Castillo will give an honorary Lucia Award to Veronica Lynn, that great Cuban actress, who is going to come to Jibara. And also because it is a festival that takes the original name again, it is something that we have designed little by little, at a time when we have been growing for 2 years in cinema under construction, and obviously the idea of awards with production support. In this case, cinema under construction has Cherubusco Studios and Horizonte, an Italian entity, and Cherubusco studios that are Mexican, they are really important. We have a project that started last year, which is the Poor Cinema Factory, which was already a way of insinuating the name. The factory is a support to national cinema, but in the eastern region.
The festival will present the Lucia de Honor 2025 award to the Gypsy House Project, film critic Luciano Castillo, and National Theater Award winner Veronica Lynn.
The Lucia of Honor is a recognition that I am very grateful for, which is a kind of crowning achievement of my work on the preservation of the national film heritage, and its safeguarding, that is, to look for alliances and alternatives to restore this heritage that is so important because it is the memory of the country, and we must fight all the time to ensure it for present and future generations.
The
Root of the Olive, by Bolivian director Sergio Eguino Vieira, is one of the works in competition. This is a co-production of the Chosky Audiovisual Laboratory and Resumen Latino-American de Tercer Mundo, with the collaboration of Al Mayadeen in Spanish, which tells the story of 5 Palestinians in Cuba.
For us, it is an honor to be in the official selection competing as a documentary at the International Festival of Poor Cinema in Jabara. Because the spaces for this type of cinema are increasingly limited, just remember that Netflix has removed all Palestinian films from its schedule. When we talk about censorship, we have to look at those big hegemonic media. We have to look at social networks, and we must realize that the message that can elevate the Palestinian spirit is increasingly limited.
Founded by the renowned Cuban filmmaker Humberto Salas, the Jabara International Poor Film Festival arrives in its 19th edition with a wide and innovative program that includes film sections to new theoretical events.
And the story of Vladimir Rosomaha, a Ukrainian soldier who had to experience firsthand the horrors of war, shows the harsh realities faced by Ukrainian soldiers on the battlefield, as they are sent unprepared and on missions from which they have no hope of coming out alive. Our colleague Oleg Jasinski has the report.
Last week, the story of Ukrainian soldier Vladimir Rosomaja and his rescuer, Russian paratrooper Vitaly Popov, went viral. Vladimir, in his 40s, was literally hunted down and taken to the front against his will, like thousands of other ordinary Ukrainians. This is not an exception in today's Ukraine, but neither is it an exception that a Russian soldier, risking his life, provides help to his wounded enemy, as Vitaly did.
In history, there are many cases when Russian soldiers have taken pity on their enemy and helped them. There are also cases when a wounded Ukrainian soldier is rescued. There are deep and special meanings in this. We are one people, Ukraine, Russia. The Ukrainian soldier did not expect a humane attitude towards him, because he was brought up in propaganda conditions, in which they say that Russians are not people and they hate Ukrainians, for example.
Vladimir, together with 5 other soldiers, were sent to recover a ruined building in a small village, and being wounded in an explosion, decided to surrender. Vitaly received orders to transport Vladimir to the rear. Under constant Ukrainian drone attacks against the 2 of them, Vitaly carried him for several kilometers.
He carried me in his arms. Of course, we are brothers. I don't know where people like that come from. They tell us they are bad, but in the end you understand that it's the other way around. One of his people was wounded too, Russian. And yet, he carried me in his arms.
Countless cases like these in the special military operation tell us that, despite all the pain of war and all the hatred that has been instilled between the sides, there are values that are stronger, and this will be the real triumph for these 2 peoples.
We ran and took positions. There are 2 positions there. The Ukrainians fought until they ran out of bullets. As soon as they run out of ammunition, they surrender immediately. Yes, we caught 3 of them and took them out. One of them broke his leg on the way and we had to drag him out.
The conditions we have here are very good. We have mattresses, blankets. They feed us well. They don't beat us or humiliate us. They feed us well, they don't beat us, they give us clothes. Nothing terrible happens here. It's better to surrender. I would not want to be exchanged. I am currently in captivity. I want to come back after the war, when there is peace.
Estos actos de humanidad son una gran esperanza.
These acts of humanity are a great hope for many servicemen, as well as civilians, who are in the conflict zone. When the soldiers of one side show compassion and desire to save the enemy, even in such complicated situations, their spirit really becomes invincible. It is not a war against the Ukrainians, it is a struggle to liberate them from Nazism.
Олег Ясинский, телесур.